lies. Assertions have been made that property is being confiscated. That's simply not true. They're saying people impacted by these storms will receive $750 in cash and no more. That's simply not true. They're saying the money is needed for this crisis is being diverted to migrants. What a ridiculous thing to say. It's not true. Now the claims are getting even more bizarre. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, a congresswoman from Georgia, is now saying the federal government is literally controlling the weather. We're controlling the weather. It's beyond ridiculous. It's got to stop. In moments like this, there are no red or blue states. There's one United States of America, where neighbors are helping neighbors. Volunteers and first responders are risking everything, including their own lives, to help their fellow Americans. State, local, and federal officials are standing side by side. Let me repeat, no one should make the American people question whether their governments will make sure that this disaster when it strikes, they'll be there. We will, all of us. I'm going to turn it over to Vice President Harris, if that's okay with all of you. Thank you. Madam Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Liz, thank you for the work that you have been doing. As the President said, we've been working around the clock to prepare for Hurricane Milton and to ensure that people are safe, including ensuring federal, state, and local resources are being coordinated in a smart and efficient and effective way. We have also been in constant contact with the leaders in Florida to make sure that we are cutting any red tape that might get in the way of getting relief to folks, to make sure also that communities receive the resources and the support that they need as quickly as possible. Already, we have sent more than 1,000 federal personnel to be on the ground in Florida to assist with what needs to happen in the state to prepare for this hurricane, and we will continue to scale up those efforts. What needs to happen in the state to prepare for this hurricane, and we will continue to scale up those efforts. To the people of Florida, and in particular, the people of the Tampa region, we urge you to take this storm seriously. As has been said before, this is a storm that is expected to be of historic proportion. And many of you, I know, are tough, and you've ridden out these hurricanes before. This one's going to be different. And so we ask you that by every measure, understand it's going to be more dangerous, more deadly, and more catastrophic. So please listen to your local officials. They know what they're talking about. They know what they're doing. And if you are told to evacuate, please evacuate immediately. Do not wait until it is too late. And in the hours and days ahead, President Biden and I and our administration will continue to do everything we can to protect the people who have been in the path of this storm. And once the storm has passed, we will be there to help folks recover and rebuild, as we continue to do for those communities in Florida, Georgia, North and South Carolina, and across the Southeast who have been devastated by Hurricane Helene. Finally, as the President mentioned, to any company or individual that might use this crisis to exploit people who are desperate for help through illegal fraud or price gouging, whether it be at the gas pump, the airport, or the hotel counter, know that we are monitoring these behaviors and the situation on the ground very closely, and anyone taking advantage of consumers will be held accountable. The bottom line is this hurricane poses an extreme danger, and we urge everyone in Florida to take extreme caution. And we are with you, and we will get through this together. And with that, I will hand it over to Homeland Security Advisor Liz Sherwood-Randall.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Mr. President, Madam Vice President, you will now receive a briefing on the latest forecast for Hurricane Milton and actions that we have taken to prepare for it and be ready to respond to it. You'll hear of FEMA, Deanne Criswell, the Director of the National Hurricane Center, Mike Brennan, the Director of the National Weather Service, Ken Graham, Secretary of Homeland Security, Ali Mayorkas, and the Commandant of the Coast Guard, Admiral Linda Fagan. We'll begin the briefing with Administrator Criswell. Over to you, Deanne.
Thank you, Liz. Mr. President, Madam Vice President, I just want to assure you we are taking this storm very seriously. As you will hear from Dr. Brennan shortly, Milton is currently a Category 4 storm and will remain a hurricane as it crosses over Florida. At your direction, Mr. President, I will be traveling down to Tallahassee tonight to embed at the state EOC to meet with my team as well as our state partners. And I will be there to assess the damages and the impacts immediately following the storm, working in close coordination with the state to ensure that they have everything that they need to support their priorities. As you have always directed me to do, I am leaning forward to make sure that we are strategically placing our resources and our teams to be able to rapidly respond in Florida. There are currently over 1,000 federal personnel on the ground in Florida supporting the efforts from Hurricane Helene, as well as the previous storms that have happened over the last few years. And I have directed, at your direction, an additional 1,200 search and rescue personnel from FEMA, the Coast Guard, and the Department of Defense to stage in Florida so they are ready to take action as soon as Milton makes landfall. This also includes 30 high water vehicles, helicopters, as well as boats to be able to go in and support the counties and the states as needed. I've also moved over 500 ambulances to help assist with the response, 6 incident management assistance teams one specifically into Tampa and others throughout the region, multiple power assessment teams, and dozens of medical facility assessment teams so they can go in and check on the health and medical facilities as soon as the storm passes. And Mr. President and Madam Vice President, I have also moved millions of meals and liters of water into Florida to be able to support any of those immediate needs. I really appreciate, Mr. President and Madam Vice President, your continuous effort to help lift up the warnings and the guidance that you just gave about what people need to do in the path of Hurricane Milton. This is an extremely dangerous storm, and we need all of the residents that are in the path of the storm to listen to their local officials. They will tell you if there's still time to evacuate or what you need to do if you are still where you're at. They will give you the right information about what you need to do to protect yourself where you are at right now. Sometimes just traveling a few miles inland can mean the difference between life and death, and nobody has to lose their life as a result of this storm. So in short, Mr. President and Madam Vice President, I assure you we are taking this storm extremely seriously. We are focused, and we are ready to support the people of Florida.
Dan, you're doing a hell of a job. You always have. We've been through a lot of this together, all three of us, including the Vice President. And I have one question right now, though. What are you most worried about today and into tomorrow? And what messaging can we do to help people in the hours before it makes landfall?
Mr. President, the biggest concern is making sure people have gotten out of harm's way. Over the next 24 hours, we are going to see significant winds. We are going to see storm surge. We are going to see flooding from the rain. People need to be able to take this storm seriously. They need to move, if they still have time to move, out of harm's way. And we are prepared to support Florida with additional search and rescue assets to help save lives. That's our immediate concern, Mr. President, is saving lives over the next 24 hours.
Have you ever seen a storm like this one since you've been in charge?
I think this is going to be one of the biggest ones that we have seen after it makes landfall. I mean, we saw a lot of impact from Hurricane Ian, but this one is different. This one just looks different, and I think we're going to have a lot of impacts and people that are going to need our help, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
This one is different. The latest advice, again, to President Biden. Let me just summarize before we close the program. The president saying many communities haven't had time to catch their breath. 2 hurricanes in 2 weeks. He said he'd phoned the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, and the various mayors. He said he'd given them his personal number, and he then slammed Donald Trump for the onslaught of lies over the previous hurricane. The Vice President, Kamala Harris, said to people of Florida, I urge you to take this one seriously. Many people have ridden out hurricanes before. This one is different, said the Vice President. It is more deadly, more catastrophic. If told to evacuate, evacuate, she said. Don't wait till it's too late. Well, that the key lines from this briefing, which brings us to the end of today's Verified Live. Thanks so much for watching. Do stay with BBC News over these next crucial hours with regular updates from the situation in Florida and the situation in the Middle East. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.
Hello there. There's been a lot of cloud and some rain around again today, but over the next couple of days, things are going to look and feel a bit different because it will be turning drier, but it's also getting colder. And we started to see that colder air arriving across northern areas as the northerly wind is picking up. And that northerly wind is going to blow down across the whole of the country and push this rain and drizzle southwards overnight. Following that, there'll be a few showers. They could be wintry over the tops of the Scottish mountains. But with the clearer skies in Scotland, we're more likely to have a frost, could be -2 or -3. Further south, where there's more cloud, temperatures are going to be held a bit higher, and that cloud still producing some rain first thing. That'll move away, and then we're all in the same boat for tomorrow. Sunny spells, many places dry. A few showers coming in anywhere exposed to that north to northwesterly wind, which will again be strongest around those North Sea coasts, and here it will feel particularly cold out there. Temperatures maybe not changing too much in Scotland and Northern Ireland, but for southern parts of England and Wales, it's going to be much cooler than it's been so far this week, and that colder air is in place. Again, as we head into Friday, we lose the northerly wind. We pick up a westerly wind, actually, which will bring cloud and some showery rain into Scotland for Northern Ireland, England and Wales. It's looking generally dry. The winds will be lighter here. Could be a touch of frost, though, early on across England and Wales. And with that cold air still in place, temperatures aren't changing too much, typically 11 or 12 degrees. So a chilly end to the week, and it's going to be quite cool, I think, into the weekend as well. This area of low pressure is going to continue to bring some rain into Scotland, but we could see this rain pushing into Northern Ireland as well, and eventually northern parts of England. To the south, there may be a bit of sunshine, but there could be some showers too. And following on from that rain, there could be a few wintry showers in northern Scotland as that northerly wind briefly returns. So gold again for northern Scotland. 7 or 8 degrees here further south, where we could reach 13 or 14 degrees. That wetter weather will slide away, and in turn we're going to find a ridge of high pressure building in for the second half of the weekend. That's really settling things down. It will be a chilly start again. The winds are going to be light on Sunday. There should be quite a bit of sunshine around. It's going to be a dry day. Bit of mist and fog possible across some western areas early in the morning. Those temperatures not changing a great deal. Again, typically a cool 11 or 12.
The 2024 US election looks set to be one of the most extraordinary yet. Could there be further shocks ahead in this historic race to the White House? Get the latest headlines in the BBC News app. Get in-depth coverage on bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story of the US election on BBC News.
Michael Palin.
Boy George, Juliette Binoche, welcome to This Cultural Life.
Some of the world's leading artistic figures revealed to me their influences.
Suddenly there was a little glimpse that perhaps there was a future doing comedy.
And the experiences that have inspired their own work.
Art is so important because it really can transform you inside.
I'm very different to the person I was 10 years ago.
For a fascinating insight into what fires the creative imagination, join me, John Wilson, for This Cultural Life. Watch on iPlayer.
At 6, Hurricane Milton is closing in on Florida. Millions are told to prepare for catastrophic impact. In the last few minutes, President Biden has addressed the nation.
Winds will be fierce at well over 100 miles per hour, with storm surges reaching up to 15 feet, and up to 18 inches of rain. It's looking like the storm of the century.
Florida's West Coast cities are turned into ghost towns as millions move away from the coast with huge storm surges expected. Already dangerous tornadoes developing over Florida hours before Hurricane Milton is due to make landfall. Also tonight, shock as the frontrunner to be the next leader of the Conservative Party is eliminated from the contest. James Cleverly is out as Tory MPs put Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick through to the last two. Joe Biden has spoken by phone to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss Israel's response to Iran's missile attack last week. And the history maker, Joe Root, now England's highest ever scorer of Test match runs.
And coming up on BBC News, line judges at Wimbledon will be a thing of the past as the All England club controversially update to electronic line calling from next year.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. This is the west coast of Florida right now as millions of people brace themselves for the lethal hurricane that is bearing down on them. The Category 4 storm with sustained winds of 155 miles an hour is still about 12 hours away. It's expected to be the most powerful storm to hit Florida in more than a century. Well, this is where the hurricane is expected to hit before it passes right over the state of Florida. And forecasters are warning of torrential rain, flash flooding, high winds, and possible storm surges of up to 15 feet. Surges happen when water moves inland from the coast. This is what it looks like from space. This was filmed from the International Space Station earlier today, and it shows just how vast the hurricane is. Well, our correspondent Gordon Carrera is in Tampa in Florida, where it's due to hit. And Gordon, conditions already starting to worsen there, yet it's hours away.
That's right, Sophie. We are about 12 hours or so from Milton making landfall here on the Florida coast. But the wind and the rain has been getting noticeably more intense in the last few hours. And everyone who's still here in the city knows there's more to come overnight when Milton finally hits. President Biden has described it as possibly the storm of the century. And here in Tampa, this has been a city which has been preparing for the worst. Tampa today has the feel of a ghost town, a city that's been left to the wildlife. The few people who are still out are mainly here because they're taking desperate steps to protect what they can. Like Fatum, who kept her shop open so people could get last-minute supplies, but is now boarding it up. She's written her name on her arm in case something happens to her.
Fatum.
Fatum,
I write my name here just in case I got flooded. Nobody knows where I am. So.
You're that worried? You've written your name on your arm?
It's better for people to know my identity, just in case.
So
you don't know.
Yeah.
This is the worst one. It's gonna come. So hopefully everybody's safe.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not bad. Just electric and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, losing power is not a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
Losing lives that's what matters.
Yeah. Thank you. This is Tampa's entertainment district. Normally it's bustling, but today it's boarded up. It lies just outside the mandatory evacuation zone, but everyone here seems to have taken the advice and either got out or hunkered down. At least half the city has left, and police are focusing on those who've remained in the high-risk areas.
So we've evacuated nearly 200,000 people, but the challenge is it's just a few that are still out there, and our officers are going door to door to try to convince those people to actually evacuate. Some are reluctant, but our goal is to save lives here, and the more people we can get evacuated, the more lives we can save.
The Tampa region has around 3 million people living in it, and many did make their way out in the last few days, heeding the stark warnings. Petrol stations have been running out as people fill up. No one's quite sure when they will come back and to what.
We've never had one like this. I've been here for 38 years and never had one that forced us to do this. Never being able to find fuel. This is the only place that has fuel. Diggers have also been trying to clean up the debris from Hurricane Helene, which hit 2 weeks ago, to try and reduce the risk of Milton throwing all of this around and causing more damage.
but time has now run out.
You need to prepare for catastrophic impacts. This is going to be a serious storm, one that could forever change communities that are still recovering from Helene.
I know it's really tough, leaving behind your home, your belongings, everything you own. But I urge everyone in Hurricane Milton's path to follow all safety instructions as we head to the next 24 hours. It's literally a matter of life and death.
But now, with the storm just hours away from landfall, it's a question of waiting and bracing for impact. Gordon Carrera, BBC News, Tampa.
So why is this hurricane so powerful, and why is Florida being hit by the second hurricane in just 2 weeks? Our climate editor, Justin Rolat, is here to explain. Justin.
Thanks, Sophie. Well, hurricanes are tropical cyclones that form around the coasts of North America. Just look at the scale of Hurricane Milton. Now, the exact causes of individual storms are complex, but hurricanes only form above warm water, generally at least 27 degrees Celsius. The heat and moisture from the sea is the fuel that allows them to develop and gives them the energy to keep on spinning. Now, the number of hurricanes has not increased over the past century, and scientists don't expect it to do so as our climate warms. However, they say it is likely tropical cyclones are getting more intense, with more of them reaching Category 3 or above. We are also seeing a likely increase in how quickly some cyclones intensify. Both Hurricane Helene 2 weeks ago and Hurricane Milton grew stronger very quickly. Scientists say that's because climate change is warming the world's oceans, meaning storms can pick up more energy and therefore have higher wind speeds. Warmer air also holds more moisture, leading to more intense rainfall. Sea temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico have been significantly higher than normal this summer, around 2 degrees Celsius above average. And a report published today found these unusually high sea temperatures were made between 200 and 500 times more likely by climate change. Look at this, the predicted storm surge, that rush of seawater associated with low-pressure storms. It is happening on top of already higher sea levels. And now that surge could be as high as 15 feet, 4.5 meters. But while thousands flee the hurricane, these guys are flying into the storm, literally. Staff from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration yesterday collecting vital data from Milton to help keep millions safe. I do not envy them. Sophie.
Don't either. Justin, thank you. Well, we have live pictures from the west coast of Florida, and we'll have the latest on Hurricane Milton as it barrels across the Gulf of Mexico on the news at 10. But now we move on to our other main story this evening, and the next leader of the Conservative Party will be either Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick, after the frontrunner James Cleverly was dramatically eliminated from the race this afternoon. This is how the MPs' votes were cast: 42 for Kemi Badenoch, who came bottom in yesterday's vote, 41 for Robert Jenrick and 37 for James Cleverly. Now it's up to Tory party members to choose who their next leader will be. Our political editor Chris Mason sent this report from Oxford.
For the first time since 1777, Oxfordshire has no Conservative MPs. People here in Banbury have sent Conservatives to Westminster for over a century, but they didn't in July. So what do Tory party members in this county make of the contest to replace Rishi Sunak?
Nervous?
Table, chairs, pumpkins and a laptop. Time to watch the result at a farm shop.
Kemi Badenoch, 42 votes. James Cleverly, 37 votes. And Robert Jenrick, 41 votes.
Wow. Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick through, James Cleverly out.
What do you think of that? I mean, that is quite something, isn't it?
That's a shock. Given yesterday's results and how he was at conference, I thought he would walk it at this stage.
Turning to you, you have your Jenrick badge proudly there, and your man has made it to the last two.
The exact reverse of what I was expecting. As it stands right now, Jenrick's got steadier hands to steer the unstable ship.
What is it about Kemi Badenoch that you like?
Many moderate-minded Conservatives like myself, faced with the choice of Rob Jenrick, who I think is a steady candidate, and Kemi Badenoch, who has quite a lot of potential, whether upwards or downwards we know not at this time, would prefer to go for the latter.
Well, I'm really pleased because I'm just disappointed I'm not wearing my Kemi badge.
And James wanted James Cleverly to make the last two.
I'm very disappointed to see that he didn't get through. I think he would have been the unity candidate that could have really brought the party together, but also, delivered for people across the UK.
Back in Westminster, today's victors offer their reaction.
My message is one of change, to change our party, not with platitudes, but with policies that will address the big challenges facing our country, on the NHS, on the economy and immigration.
We need to unite behind a real conservatism that means something to the country. Throwing out policy without rooting it in values doesn't work, and that's what we saw at the last election. We cannot make the same mistake again.
Hands up for Kemi Badenoch. And hands up for Robert Jenrick.
The jeopardy of elections, eh? And now the next one begins. Rishi Sunak's successor will be announced 3 weeks on Saturday. So who are Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch? Political labels are never all that much use, but if you're a Conservative who sees yourself as centrist or on the left of the party, you don't have a flag bearer in the final two. Robert Jenrick has moved to the right since he became an MP, his experience in government shifting his instincts on matters like immigration. Kemi Badenoch, seen by her supporters as nothing less than a potential star, but they do acknowledge that she has the potential to put her foot in her mouth too. Tonight, I'd say she is probably the favourite to win, but then after the last 24 hours or so, who'd make predictions?
Indeed. Chris Mason, thank you. 2 years ago, an investigation was launched at the world-famous Great Ormond Street Hospital into a bone surgeon who'd been carrying out leg lengthening and straightening surgery on children. The review has already found that some surgery resulted in long-term pain, injury, even amputation. Now the BBC has learnt that the investigation into Yasser Jubar is being extended to 4 other hospitals in London. Our health editor, Hugh Pym, is with me now. And which hospitals are involved?
Well, Sophie, 3 of them are private hospitals, St John and St Elizabeth, the Portland and the Cromwell, and 1 NHS trust, Chelsea and Westminster. It has to be said that St John and St Elizabeth have made clear that only adult surgery was carried out by Mr Jubar there, but they've all said they are engaging with the Great Ormond Street review. Now, the BBC has also seen a report done by the Royal College of Surgeons for Great Ormond Street. It was handed in a year ago, but it's only really come out this week and has been sent to some of the families. We've seen the report. Some of the conclusions are very damning, saying that there were significant issues in relation to patient consent, that staff were upset about the standard of care, and that sometimes staff did not tell families that the operation had been carried out in a different way from that which was planned. Now, Great Ormond Street have said they are deeply sorry, and they've expressed that to families. The review is ongoing, they say, and will be committed to looking at all these 700 cases, and they say they will report back to the Royal College next year.
Hugh Pym, thank you. In yet another twist in what's known as the Wagatha Christie case, Rebecca Vardy has been ordered to pay Colleen Rooney a further £100,000 as part of the money that she owes following the high-profile legal case 2 years ago. Barristers for the pair were back in court today in a dispute over legal fees. Mrs Vardy had sued Mrs Rooney for libel, but lost the High Court legal action and was ordered to pay 90% of her fees. Our culture reporter, Noor Nanji, reports.
It's exactly 5 years to the day since this viral social media post sparked a high-profile libel battle dubbed Wagatha Christie. Colleen Rooney accusing Rebecca Vardy of leaking private information about her to the press.
People going behind your back and, delivering information which is my information to deliver. If I wanted to do it, then it's down to me, but not for anyone else.
The trial attracted huge attention when it reached court 2 years ago. Vardy lost and was ordered to pay 90% of Rooney's legal costs, which now stand at £1.8 million. This week, the dispute came back to the High Court, although neither woman attended this time, with Vardy's lawyers seeking to reduce that bill. There were some headline-grabbing claims, including when Rebecca Vardy's team claimed that Colleen Rooney's costs included a lawyer staying at the luxury Nobu Hotel and running up substantial drinks, dinner and minibar charges. Colleen Rooney's lawyer argued that those claims were factually inaccurate. In the end, the judge dismissed a number of Mrs. Vardy's claims and ordered her to pay a further £100,000 to Mrs. Rooney. This isn't the end of the battle. The final amount that Vardy needs to pay will be determined when the case returns, likely next year. Noor Nanji, BBC News.
Time is 6:15. Our top story this evening. Millions of people heed evacuation orders in Florida as President Biden describes Hurricane Milton as the storm of the century. And still to come, why Wimbledon is ditching line judges after nearly 150 years.
Coming up on BBC News, the former Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp is back in football after being appointed the new head of global soccer at Red Bull. Klopp left Liverpool last season after almost 8 years in charge.
In the last hour, President Biden and Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have spoken on the phone as the Middle East is braced for an Israeli response to last week's Iranian missile attack. Let's join Clive Murray, who...
Yeah, hi there, Sophie. That call between the two leaders, interestingly, also included the Vice President Kamala Harris joining the conversation. And this photograph of Prime Minister Netanyahu taking that call reflects the fact that the White House is very anxious that while Israel does have the right to defend itself, the Israeli military must be held back from precipitating a dramatic escalation in the current tensions here. And now on the agenda of that call, we expect would have been clearly Israel's invasion of Lebanon and the expansion of Israel's military operations on the ground there in recent days, and of course the situation with Iran and the nature of any possible Israeli response following Tehran's multiple missile attack about a week ago. But while America might be calling for restraint, influential voices here within Israel